Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division, retired. Listener discretion is advised due to the graphic nature of the content. This story is true. The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All information presented is taken from the public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved are used with the utmost respect, and no part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. As a retired homicide investigator, I believe these stories matter to honor the victims, to understand the truth, and to bring closure to the families left behind. Some content may be disturbing to listeners. Discretion is strongly advised. This is a particular sad story. What compounds the sadness of this horrific tale is the fact that two young children were affected deeply by it, one of which was 7 years old, who had discovered her deceased mother in bed. How tragic. It was 1996. Camden City, New Jersey would be hit with a record high total of 60 murders this year. Tanja Carroll, black female, age 26, would be the 8th victim of homicide so far this year. This deadly year, 26 people had been slain by this time the year before in 1995. Tanja Carroll was a schoolteacher in South Jersey. She had suffered and died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head, which were confirmed at her autopsy, which took place on Friday, May the 10th. She was found dead in her own bed at the Everett Gardens Apartments, which were located in the 700 block of Primus Court near 8th and Everett Streets in the city of Camden, New Jersey, the murder capital of the nation. The victims, 2 minor children, were in the home at the time of the murder, but were unharmed. A 1-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. Both were placed in the custody of relatives. I was first out. It was broad daylight. I was on call for the next homicide case to occur in the city or in the county. I was assigned this case. There had been 5 arrests made so far this year in the slayings that were still under investigation. Of those deaths were 2 women, Rosalind Hall and Joan Simmons, both victims of an April arson fire in the city of Camden. They were burnt to death on purpose. That story another time. The investigation revealed that since Tanja had gotten home early in the morning hours on Friday, May the 10th, the babysitter who was sitting her 2 minor children the evening before had spent the night. Tanja and a few friends had been out at a local Camden nightclub celebrating a birthday for an evening of cocktails and dancing. This was on Thursday evening. The babysitter had been awakened by the 7-year-old daughter. The daughter reportedly had gone to her mother's bedroom and attempted to awaken her mother in the early morning hours on Friday. The victim usually was awake and up by now, getting the children prepared for school and daycare for the 1-year-old boy. When the 7-year-old could not awaken her mother, she, according to the babysitter, awakened her, the babysitter, and told her that her mom was not waking up. This part of the information I found to be highly suspicious. The babysitter, I'll call Miss Lizelot, initially stated that after she had fallen asleep on a downstairs couch in the apartment late on the evening of Thursday night, May the 9th, before Tanya had arrived home. After Tanya had gone to bed, a man, a stranger to Miss Lizelot, that had been at the nightclub partying with other people, had, according to the victim, told the babysitter he had basically interjected himself into getting a ride with the victim and her friends back to Tanya's apartment. According to this witness, Tanya was trying to play him off. She didn't want anything to do with him. She wasn't interested in his advances toward her. He had bogarted his way into being with the girls on this night and ended up getting a ride back with them to Tanya's apartment. She stated that when she awoke sometime after Tanya had gone to bed, she went upstairs and got in bed with Tanya, who was alone in her bedroom and who she thought was sound asleep. She claimed that neither she saw or heard anything unusual. She further stated that she never seen the unknown man before or since, and she had no idea as to his identity. Her only description of this unknown male was that he was a black dude. He was a black dude of average height and stature. She stated she did not see or hear him do anything. She thought he may have been with Tanya upstairs because he had gone upstairs with her. She claimed that she never saw him after that, and he was not upstairs when she joined Tanya in bed. Now, under further interview with this witness, she claimed that while she was in bed with Tanya, she didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. The unknown gentleman was gone, and Tanya was sound asleep. She awoke, she went back downstairs in the early morning and was alerted by the 7-year-old daughter of Tanya that the child could not get mommy to wake up. She then went upstairs to awaken Tanya. She found Tanya cold and unresponsive. She then went back downstairs and dialed 911. Camden City Police responded with ambulance. Tanya was found dead in her bed. Now, there were no suspects, no weapon, and no motive for this killing whatsoever. There was no identities provided as to who was with the victim on Thursday night at the club. The case was a complete mystery, as most of my cases usually were. One nightclub at which the partygoers were was identified. However, it was suspected that the girls had been to a few clubs that evening. So that was nothing really of evidential value, other than I may have to retrace their steps and try to locate witnesses to talk to about the goings-on at these particular clubs that particular evening of Thursday night. In this city, as in any other city, it is very difficult at best to get information about a homicide. The general rule is, snitches get stitches. We dealt with that as a constant barrier. I had my work cut out for me on this one, as usual. So, At the crime scene, I find that one of the pillows in Tanya's bed had been used by the killer to muffle the sound of 2 gunshots. The pillow exhibited 2 perforations of what appeared to be gunshot entry and exit holes with gunshot residue. 2 empty 9mm shell casings were found in the immediate area of the bed. That could explain why the shots were not heard by the sleeping babysitter. It's possible, I guess. But that's an awful loud gun, a 9mm. Additionally, if she was telling the truth, I don't believe she would have crawled into bed with Tanya had she known that she had been murdered. I concluded my investigation at the scene. Of course, the victim's blood was apparent on her body, the pillow, and bed sheets. It had soaked through to the mattress beneath her body. It was disturbing to learn that Tanya had been initially found by her 7-year-old child. The Camden County Crime Lab unit responded. Their task was to document the scene and conduct various procedures in the search for anything of evidential value to the investigation. Of course, the child abuse unit was notified and intervened with the children before they were released into the custody of their relatives. The crime scene was taped off with yellow police line tape by the crime lab technicians. The victim body was pronounced dead at the scene by telemetry from Cooper Hospital. The body was photographed in its position as found. The residence was thoroughly examined by the crime scene people and myself. The front and rear backyard spaces were searched for a possible weapon, as no weapon was found at the scene. I called the Kansas City Fire Department to respond to the scene with a hook and ladder, and a rooftop search was conducted. We were, of course, looking for a discarded weapon. We also checked any nearby dumpsters and sewer drains for a weapon. Nothing further of evidential value was found or identified. After I completed my initial investigation at the crime scene while a canvass of the immediate area was in process, I had one witness at the scene who made the 911 call reporting the death, Miss Lizelot. After interviewing her on scene, I arranged to have her transported to the homicide unit to await being formally interviewed by me and to give her formal statement in the case. I responded to my office where I did interview her and obtained her tape recorded statement. Her statement consisted of the same information which she had provided in my field interview of her on the scene. Upon completion, she was released. I was basically at ground zero. I had no leads, no motive, no reason or explanation as to why this young school teacher, a mother of 2, was now shot to death in her own bed. Quite disturbing. No known feuds with anyone that I knew about at this time anyway. No known baby daddies to speak to as of this time. I would conduct in-house efforts by working the phone, attempting to locate any next of kin for family notifications and parental information, which was accomplished in very short order by records found with family court records, etc. The first day on this case was consumed by such tasks, including ordering the 911 recorded message that was made by the witness. I would obtain that recording and review it as was protocol in my normal investigative functions. But I wouldn't have that for a couple of days. When I did receive the 911 tape recorded message, which had been called into the Central Communications on the morning of Friday, May the 10th, 1996, of course I had already contacted some of the friends who were out partying with my victim the night before her death. They were interviewed. Nothing much more of evidential value was gleaned except for the fact that an unknown stranger had been interjecting himself into their group and was mainly focused on Tanja. I had plans of efforts I intended to follow up with, but that was all I had. If you want to call it grasping for straws, I was. I certainly was at a loss for a suspect to pursue. At the moment, anyway. He was a ghost. I was now sitting at my desk after obtaining the taped 911 call. It was a business as usual kind of morning. The homicide squad room was swamped with various older and the two fresh unsolved murders of the two females mentioned earlier. A few of the suited homicide investigators were in their cubbies busy with their tasks of the day. Both in-office secretaries, Vicki Thompson and Alberta Kalin, were buried at their front desks transcribing a myriad of homicide reports, replete with sudden deaths which they prepared on a daily basis for the entire homicide squad and assistant prosecutors in the homicide unit. Computers were abuzz. I opened the Marantz tape recorder on my desk. I slapped on a headset, popped the 9/11 tape into the machine, closed the lid. I rewound the tape to the beginning and pushed play. I was now giving my full attention to the tape, which I said is just one of the things you do as a homicide detective. I was not prepared for what I was about to discover at all. This never, or at least never happened for me before. This was a first for me. I, without mistaking, was able to identify the voice of the caller as Miss Lizelot, the babysitter. No surprise here. We knew she had made the call to 911. Central responds. First thing I hear is the open line on the phone. Next, the phone is heard ringing at Central Communications. The next thing I hear, I had to play over and over again. I mean to tell you, I perked up like the late Robert Blake, also known as Beretta, the moment the jury acquitted him on March the 16th, 2005, of murdering his wife, Bonnie Lee Baker. He was slumped in his chair expecting to be found guilty and put into a 6-foot by 8-foot box in prison. Suddenly, he was upright, with a look on his face that I can't describe. I mentioned him to give you the perspective of how I was reacting to what I was hearing. While Miss Lizelot is seconds from the 911 operator to answer the phone, my I don't know nothing witness is talking to herself. She says, while no one but she is on the phone, and she says it in a low voice, and she's speaking to herself. Here it comes. I can't believe he just walked right out that back door. The operator answers the phone. She reports the incident and makes no mention of seeing or hearing anything when asked by the Central Communications dispatcher, something they are trained to do. This was a bombshell. I'm in business. I grabbed the recorder and I bum rushed into the office of Assistant Prosecutor Mary Allison Albright, who was at her desk. She would be the prosecutor assigned to prosecute this case, if and when we were ever able to make an arrest of the person or persons responsible. I tell her, listen to this. I say, this is my teacher case. I push play on the recorder with a portion of the tape of her. She breaks into a smile as she's listening. We play it again. I wrap it up and I'm out the door, en route to snatch Miss Liza up for a second interview. Only this time, she will be facing a blistering interrogation. What was important here, so you understand, was I knew that she had seen the unknown male at the victim's apartment, but she lied to me about seeing him leave the residence. There was no mention of that. The when he left was left out of her initial statement. She made a conscious effort to deceive me. She was withholding information in a murder investigation, and I could now use that fact to give her another opportunity to tell us everything she knew, or she could become charged in the case. I now believed that she knew more. In homicide investigation, you must take your case seriously and be serious if you expect the public to take you seriously. People tend to lie more when they know being a witness is and can be dangerous. I did have her home address and phone number. I called her. I left a friendly, bland message, not letting on at all that it was urgent that I find and speak with her. My message was, "Hey, Miss Lily, this is Detective Gavel. How you doing? I'm working on Tanya's matter. I have a question for you. Give me a call back when you get this message. It is now Wednesday at 1 p.m. Thanks for your cooperation. If I don't answer my cell, please page me at this number." And I left my pager number. Thanks. As a detective, I had the overall conclusion from my contact with her so far that Miss Lizelot was not being forthcoming with information. It was bothering me that she actually stated that she climbed into Tanya's bed with her. This would now mean that she knew that he left because she saw him leave. Then she went to Tanya's bedroom. Remember that? You have to remember these tiny details. They become important. I was very curious that she stated that she did not know his name. Was she not introduced to him that night when he came to the apartment? Put it this way. I was growing more skeptical, more suspicious of her, and I definitely had some more questions for her. When contact was made with her, I took her into the office interview room in the prosecutor's homicide offices. I was holding back the information on the tape. I began with her going over the events again, starting with her first being contacted to babysit on Thursday night. In that discussion again, she was never introduced to the man, according to her. Never saw him again after he went upstairs with Tanya. The conversation was consistent with her tape-recorded statement that she previously provided. Oh, she was well practiced by now. What she didn't realize was I was now one step ahead of her. It was time to interrogate her. which this stuff I lived for and loved. I wanted to get her attention and inform her that she could end up being charged in this investigation. I informed her that I was going to read her tape-recorded rights under the Miranda decision. I did. She listened intently, and she waived her rights to an attorney and agreed to speak with me freely and voluntarily. I memorialized that again on tape. I'm careful if I'm not anything. I spoke first. I asked if she was aware that withholding information in a homicide investigation was against the law, and I said it in a tone where she had to know, the gloves are off, baby. It's time to rumble. She wasn't sure. I told her, well, I am. It is against the law to withhold information in a homicide investigation. I assured her that if she had additional information in this case and lied about it or withheld it, that she could be charged. I made that very clear to her. First thing I noticed was her body language changed. She crossed her arms in front of her and leaned back slightly in her chair. She swallowed hard and said, I told you everything I knew. I said, do you see that tape recorder there? She replies, yes. I say, what if I told you I have tape recorded evidence that you lied to me and that you were in fact withholding information in this murder investigation? Well, I knew at that point I had her complete attention. I intentionally strung out the accusation. I wanted it to be a big thing in my case. I wanted her to know that she was in a situation I was needing answers to. It was a strategy as well as a follow-up mission. Then I threw her a life raft. I said, now listen to me carefully, Lily. I do not think you intentionally lied to me when I interviewed you and you gave your statement. But I gave you a second and even a third chance to tell me honest answers to my questions. If you remember, I swore you in as an honest witness, and you swore on tape that you would tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Do you remember that? Answer, yes. And I said, that was before you gave your formal statement, right? Yes. Well, I have proof that you did not. Now, I'm leaning toward giving you another chance as I'm leaning in closer to her. And I state another chance to answer my questions here today honestly. If you do, we can do an addendum to your statement. No big deal. If you do not, I will have no choice but to have a grand jury convene and present my evidence to them. Then they can decide your fate, whether to add a perjury charge to my charge of withholding information and impeding my investigation. You can be in deep trouble here. I don't see it's worth you going through all of that. I know you had nothing to do with the hurting of Tanja, but listen, she was murdered in her own bed. A mother of 2 children, a school teacher that you obviously also loved. They don't have a mommy anymore. Do you really want to help protect the killer from paying for what he did? You were there, Lily. He could have killed you too. You can see that I was motivating her to try and extract any and all additional information which I believe she possessed. She repeated, she told me everything she knew. This is Camden, New Jersey. where people grow up around lies and deceit all of their lives. They have a general disdain and mistrust for the police. More often than not, you have to play hardball with them if you want any chance of them telling you the truth. Well, I rolled my eyes slightly in a look of, like, yeah, right. I said, "This is your 911 call." I pushed play. The tape began with her initial 911 call to Central Communications. I was watching her every move at this juncture. I wanted to see the look on her face when she heard what she had said and revealed to me on this tape. I turned the volume up and said, "Now just listen." And here it comes. I can't believe he just walked right out the back door. I stopped the tape. I said, "That's you, right?" "Mm-hmm." I said, "What? I can't hear you. Speak up." Next, I go for the jugular. I said, "Listen, if you end up being charged in this case for covering up information in a murder, what do you think the judge and jury will think of you when they hear this? Not to mention how Tanya's family is going to feel about you not telling us everything." She said, "I was scared. I still am." I said, "Well, that's a normal feeling. He's still out there. He needs to get caught and locked up if he did this killing, which I believe he did at this point. He would be taken off the street and not be able to hurt you or anyone else. So let's start over. From the beginning. Tell the entire truth this time and answer my questions honestly." Response: "Okay, I will." She does. The new information consisted of two major facts which were unknown to me prior to the 911 tape follow-up. She said they called him Radio. He confirmed that to her as well by telling her everybody called him Radio. Now that wasn't much, but it was something. I pressed, "Well, what's his real name?" She just flat out states, "I didn't know it, he never said it, and I don't think anyone knew it when he was there that night." I asked him could she identify him if she saw him again. She said yes, that she could. And I made her commit. I said, "Well, you hesitated slightly there. Can you identify him if you ever see him again? Yes or no?" And she said, "Yes, I can." She added that she had asked him why they call him Radio, and she stated that it was because he would be carrying a boombox around on his shoulder, sometimes in the hood. The second new piece of information was that she did see him leaving out of the rear kitchen door of the residence shortly before she went upstairs and got into bed with Tanya. She got in Tanya's bed right after she saw him leave. That information helped set the approximate time frame for the murder using that information and the time of death estimated based on the condition and temperature of the body, which was done by Chief Medical Examiner Robert Siegel during her autopsy procedures. Lily Lizelot dialed 911 moments after being notified by the victim's 7-year-old daughter that she could not awaken her mom for school. Of course, a new addendum to her statement was taken. She was not charged. We needed her as a witness when and if the case progressed, and she would be much more valuable to the investigation as a witness. You don't need your only witness lawyering up, if possible. Okay, now, where are we at in this investigation? For the listeners that want to become a homicide detective, I'm going to ask you a question. What's next, right? You have a name, right? Well, you can assume that radio is a nickname or street name. But what's his real name? What's his last name? What's his address, date of birth, social security number? Does he have a rap sheet? Have police had contact with him before? This dude killed somebody. His first? His last? Maybe, if I can identify him, tie him to my murder with factual evidence, link him to the weapon if I can ever locate it. Can I locate him? Can I prove he was on the scene at the kill time? Can I break his alibi if he presents one? Can I get a confession? Fingerprints. My head is full of things I now have to do. Organize your thoughts now. You have some networking and phone work to do. Check the nickname files in the computer. Promise Gavel was one source. Camden Police Department has a huge nickname database of persons having contact with the police. Their street names were documented, which tied them to their true identifiers. The Camden County Sheriff's Department and their fugitive squad might know his identity through any previous jail time or warrant contact. Get the info out to the detectives and local police as to his description and street name. Talk to your go-to people that you normally deal with. You will find that cops want to help out, especially in a murder case. Somebody has to know who radio is. I was now very optimistic. I double-checked with my crime lab guys to make sure that they dusted the back kitchen door and latch lock and handle for latent fingerprints. They had. And they were examining and would enter their findings into the national database known as AFIS. AFIS. That stood for the Automated Fingerprint Identification System for any match in the system. Now, that'd be great if we had it by then, but we didn't. It was still a few years away. It was now 1996. AFIS became available in 1999. Well, I knew that one of my first questions of him, the suspect, if I ever had a chance to interview him, would be, what, detectives? What do you think? First question. Mine would be, do you know Tanja Carroll? My number two question would be, have you ever been to the apartment of Tanja Carroll? My third question would be, what door did you enter from? Next would be, what door did you exit out of when you left? Now, why ask those questions? If he states he never had been to her apartment, great. Then how does he explain his fingerprints in her home? Now remember something. If you have him to speak to him and interview him, if he's in custody and you want to talk about this crime that happened, you must advise him of his Miranda warnings before any questioning of the crime material is discussed. Period. If not, you can blow the case. If he states that he had been in her home, great. Now he puts himself at the crime scene. When were you there? And so forth and so on. This is how you build your case methodically, correctly, factually, truthfully. And your ultimate goal is always to try to get a confession in support and in addition to your physical evidence in your case. You can never have enough. Think like a criminal prosecutor and think like a sharp defense attorney. We got a hit, as it turned out. Radio was known on the street as Radio Raheem. His correct name was listed as Raheem Miller. The nickname file of the Camden Police Department nailed it down. He was a black male in his 20s. His address was provided indicating that he lived in one of the projects of the city. I believe it was Ablett or Morgan Village, one of those. Now this guy had a reputation. His reputation on the street was someone who was in fact a drug dealer, and he would rob and kill you or shoot you. After hearing about him, I was a little surprised that he had left a witness to the crime. If he was my guy, if he was, Miss Lizelot was a very lucky girl. Next, I obtained his color photograph. He was no stranger to the system. He had been in jail on more than one occasion. He had a rap sheet for an array of drug and assault charges, including weapons offenses. He certainly fit the mold for someone who would be capable of this type of crime. Next, I arranged a photo array, a picture lineup, if you will, of 6 pictures of similar appearing young black males, all pictures being carefully chosen as to maintain fairness if exhibiting those photos to a witness for ID purposes. You use similar backgrounds, skin tone, mustache, beard versus clean shaven. Be careful here. The procedure is very important. If your guy gets picked out and identified as your killer, but a sharp defense attorney can destroy the credibility of your photo array by pointing out that his client was the only dark-skinned black guy in the photo spread, and the witness knew the suspect that the police thought was the killer was a dark-skinned black male. Or if the background was different in that photograph than the other backgrounds. You get what I'm saying? Be mindful. Think like a defense attorney here. Remember that, because they are the ones that will destroy your cases. A lot of times, your prosecutor will see this problem and he'll correct it before you ever see a day in court. But both the prosecutor and you need to pay close attention to your investigation. Now, she, Lily Lizelot, was brought into the prosecutor's homicide unit again. She was shown the photo array. After she was given standard pre-viewing instructions, she looked at each photo and promptly picked out number 4 as the man she saw come home with our victim on Friday, May the 10th, 1996. I had her date and signed the photograph. She was on board now. She didn't hesitate. She was being truthful. She was released with, "If you see him around or hear anything about this case, get in touch with me right away." She agreed that she would. I was in business. I hooked up with my assigned Camden detective partner and got the word out that we were looking to talk to Raheem Miller. In the interim, my partner and I went to the last known address and did locate his mother at that apartment, in the projects, of course. She was a complete waste of time. A streetwise, bitter toward police mother, in quotes, of the person of interest. She would not even admit that she was his mother. No, you can't come in and look for him. I don't know what you're talking about. Get the F out of here. Very rude. Extremely hostile toward us. We tried on another occasion. We brought a well-known city detective with us to try and loosen her up. Same response. No. You got a warrant? Get out. I don't know who y'all talking about. We knew she was definitely stonewalling us and protecting her son. We would not be deterred. Well, the next thing that happened is legendary around the old homicide squad of the late 1980s and 1990s. It was time for me to present my case in our large conference room at the prosecutor's office. I was to brief our homicide unit section chief, James Conley, unit assistant prosecutors, homicide brass, and our floor detectives. I would use a large board to illustrate and pass out any photos of interest and brief the attendees on the ground I covered so far in the case, the crime lab feedback, and my current standing in the investigation. This is where I could ask for any additional resources or equipment and get input from the group in attendance. I laid out the case in its entirety to date. The last thing I stated was that we had been to the provided address for the suspect and met his mother. She was a real mother. I explained in detail that she was very uncooperative with us. We even brought Detective Lenny Hall of Camden to try to get her to cooperate. Nothing doing. We were exhausted with her, and that she was definitely trying to hide or protect her son, the suspect, Radio Raheem. Well, the Camden County Prosecutor's Office had hired a one Chuck Bentham, a retired Philadelphia police detective who had worked some time in their homicide unit there. Perhaps you've heard of him. It's an inside joke. Too funny. Anyway, I am finished my presentation. I'm beat up from the feet up from pounding the street on a daily, day and night on this very frustrating murder case. I'm sure I still had a good overhand right punch left in me if I needed it. I asked the group, anyone have any questions? Chuck Bentham stands up and says, did you, or words to that effect, go back and try to talk to the mother? Well, I hesitated for a few seconds, not believing what I had just heard him say, and I respond, I say, Chuck, why don't you blow me with that? Because I was completely frustrated with that woman, I told the group, and he's asking me, why don't I go try talking to her again? So I just, that's what I came out with. Well, he now says, what did he say? What did you say? As he starts out of his chair on his way over to where I am standing, and as he is saying, what? While the room just burst into laughter. My lieutenant, Edward Slim, jumps up and gets in front of Bentham as he's still trying to come for me. The lieutenant is also laughing his balls off at my comment and is saying to Chuck, sit down, Chuck, which he does. I'm not going to say anything other than this. Come on, Cletus. Cletus, come on. Well, from then on, the whole squad adopted my one-liner. Why don't you just blow me with that? We all laugh out aloud every time we hear it. Or just blow me. It was hilarious. You had to be there. The next chance I had, Bentham would comment on my choice of neckwear that I would choose, my ties, my neckties. The truth is, I liked the guy. We were friendly with one another. One time, I did have to jump up from my desk between Diane Wilson and he. Diane Wilson was a detective in the homicide squad at that time, and so was Chuck Bentham. Chuck had managed to piss her off over something. She balled up her fist and was ready to give him a roundhouse to his head. My money would be on Diane. Anyway, I broke it up, and that was that. On another occasion, I told him to wear an old tie into work on the next day. The truth is, I did cut it off with a pair of scissors. Chuck was a good sport about it. Sorry, Chuck. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Another guy, I can't even call him a detective. He disgraced law enforcement altogether. He was another ex-Philadelphia homicide co-worker of Bentham's, who we unfortunately hired after he retired from Philly homicide. He was a master of framing innocent people for murder in cases that the assigned detectives could not solve. He actually was credited with costing the city of Philadelphia an all-time high record amount of most millions of dollars paid out to the multiple number of persons he charged in homicides that were proven to have been wrongfully convicted and imprisoned by his framing them for murder. At any rate, it was time to make a plan and locate Mr. Miller. Bring him in for questioning. I recall it wasn't long before we did just that. We focused. We had Camden PD, the Camden County Sheriff's Fugitive Squad out, all detectives armed with Miller's ID flyer. We hunted him. We were rounding up known street drug dealers, thugs, informants, sweating them over, where's Radio Raheem? What's his real name? Did you hear anything about this homicide? We were on it. We had him in short order, AIS, what we like to call it, meaning ass in seat. I think my partner and I interviewed and interrogated him at the homicide unit at my office. I led the interrogation. He was advised of his rights. He waived them. He thought he would play the long game of he isn't involved. His alibi was that, yes, he was out in the street that night, but he went to his grandmother's house, and she should vouch for him that he was at her home and spent the evening there. He was not at the Tanja Carroll apartment, according to him. I thought, in the back of my mind, that we might be getting his fingerprints there. I was hopeful, at least. He was lying. We knew it, but couldn't charge him as of yet. We had to tighten up some time parameters, etc. And mainly, we was waiting for his fingerprint data to come back. Miller was eventually tied to the Carroll homicide, charged by me for her murder and prosecuted. I believe it was confirmed at his trial that he was in the nightclub and there was in fact a birthday celebration loosely at the bar. Assistant Prosecutor Mary Allison Albright successfully prosecuted him and won a conviction. While Miller was in the Camden County Jail awaiting transfer to Trenton State Prison for murder, he was of course conducting his usual drug dealing while he was in jail. After I had retired, I was on an air conditioning truck working with my brother. I was his helper in his heating and air conditioning business. I get a call from Assistant Prosecutor Mary Allison, who informed me that she had just gotten news that there had been a surprise contraband search at the Camden County Jail. Miller had tried to swallow a wad of cash when the officers arrived to search his cell. It was a fairly big wad of cash, apparently because he choked to death on it. He was pronounced dead in his cell. Hopefully, if his mother goes to the jail to see him before she gets the news, he will still be there and not at the morgue, so they don't have to tell her he's not here, like she told us. Hopefully. But at any rate, do you recall that in the first edition book, I stated that you must not even blink as a homicide investigator, as you might miss a single little thing which might break the case wide open. Well, this one is an example. Had I chosen not to review the 911 call tape, I may have very well missed the single clue which led to the identity of my killer, his prosecution, and his conviction. Don't be lazy. Not if you want to actually earn the title homicide detective. Of course, I might have been able to identify my shooter another way, another time, but maybe not. You strike when the iron is hot. Speaking of hot, it brings to mind a very brutal, cold-blooded murder. Another murder case, another example of thinking out of the box. Doing good, solid homicide detective work. Paying attention to the little things as much as you do to the big obvious things. The smallest detail can break it wide open. I'm going back to work. This is Detective Gavel, Sergeant First Class, Homicide Division, retired. See you next time.